I've been programming games for about 2 years, and in today's video I'm going to be talking to you how I started to create my own video games. I've made a lot of projects and also used some programming languages, game engines and other things that I will be talking about in this video. How did you start programming? How did you discover it? Let me know in the comments below. Firstly, year 2020. Quarantine. Everything was closed. I couldn't go to school, I couldn't go out, I couldn't meet with my friends. So what I was doing all day, I was just playing video games. For example Minecraft, for example Fortnite, etc. As I was playing so much, I was starting to think about how a video game was made. Why if I press W in a game the player moves forward? Why if I move the mouse the camera moves around? That's what took me to YouTube. And there I realized that games were made with programming languages and with game engines. I saw that the most used programming language is Python. And I also realized that a lot of people was encouraging beginners to learn Python as a first programming language. So I just started to learn the basics concepts of Python and of all programming languages like variables, functions, loops, etc. Once I knew all the syntax and basics concepts of programming, I started using a library of Python to make games that is called Pygame. Pygame is just a library from Python that allows us to create 2D game projects using Python. Let's say that I've used a Pygame for about 2 or 3 months. I didn't use it much because yes, I make some basic games like Pong, Snake, Breakout, and you know, that kind of games. But I didn't like to use Python to make games, you know, because you don't have an interface, you have nothing, you have just your code editor, your code, and you have to make a game with just that. Also, there weren't a lot of tutorials. Maybe if I had an error or I wanted to add something, I couldn't do it with Python or with Pygame, let's say, because Python has a lot of tutorials, but Pygame, maybe no. Why? Because games are made mostly with game engines. So once again I went to YouTube and started looking for game engines. I was between Godot or Unity, but I finally chose to use Godot because it's quite simple and easy to understand and use. And also the language that uses is JavaScript and is quite similar to Python, so it should be easier because I had learned Python before. I started using Godot. The amount of tutorials, there weren't a lot of tutorials about Godot neither, but I was having that feeling that I was actually making games. I was using a game engine, I was using tools that a game developer uses, and with Godot I made a lot of projects. I could say like 30 or 35 projects, and from that 35 projects maybe 5 or 6 projects were actually complete projects that I could publish on the Google Play Store with some publishment, obviously making some kind of polish before publishing them, but they were great games. I think with Godot I was feeling so confident of myself, really confident. So as a result I was making a lot of games. As I said before, I made a lot of games, but there was a problem with Godot. Actually I could say 2 main problems. Firstly, Godot sometimes, I don't know why, as I was making my games, suddenly it restarted, you know, it closed and opened up. I don't know why. And when it opened up again, some things of my projects were broken or didn't work well. I don't know what happened. I tried to reinstall it, to restart my PC. I tried nearly everything I could do. So imagine if I was making a complete game that I wanted to publish on the Play Store, and suddenly the project closes and I lose some things really important. Obviously, I would close and delete Godot instantly. And then the other problem is the amount of tutorials that Godot has. This is not because Godot is a bad game engine. No. This is because Godot is really new. So there aren't a lot of tutorials in YouTube. So for example, if I am making a game and I have an error, maybe it's more difficult to look for a solution on the internet. All these reasons took me to change to a new game engine. And yes, once again, I went to YouTube, look for new game engines I could use to make my projects, and I found two options. Firstly, Unity, and secondly, Unreal. I chose Unity because firstly, it's more demanded by companies, at least on my country, and is easier to learn than Unreal. So once again, I had to learn a new game engine. I had to learn a new programming language from scratch because Unity uses C# and I had no experience using C#, and C# isn't similar, for example, as Python or as JavaScript. Is other completely different thing. At the beginning, obviously, it was really hard to learn how C# works, because it's really more difficult than using JavaScript. JavaScript is really easy, and I really recommend you to use JavaScript when you're starting to use Godot, because it's really simple. But we are going to talk about this at the end of the video. At the beginning, I couldn't make a game on my own. Maybe I had to make around 4 or 5 complete projects with just tutorials. And after doing that, maybe I could make a simple game using code from other projects and obviously looking for more information on the internet. But as I said before, it was quite difficult. I am not saying that Unity is impossible to learn. No, of course not. But as everything at the beginning, it's difficult. And I think after 4 months, let's say, of using Unity, I could make games on my own. So after using Unity for about 4 months, I started to take it more seriously. I started to make games that are more complex. For example, Color World, that it's a clone of Color Switch. I took a course about how to make it, and then I added some other mechanics like post-processing effects, particle system, and other things that you can see on a previous video. What I really missed from Godot when I was using Unity was the simplicity and the time Unity takes to open a project or to compile a script is really long, unlike Godot that only takes a couple of seconds. It's like automatic to open a project. It's incredible. But with Unity you have a lot of information, you have a lot of videos about how to make everything, I would say. If you have a problem while you are programming, you can look at it online or even in the official Discord server of Unity. You send there your error and some people will answer you with a perfect answer. Of course, Godot also has a Discord server, but it's not the same as the Unity that has much more people. Also, by using Unity, I improved my logical thinking. This is thanks to C#, obviously. And if you watched a previous video about the most used programming languages nowadays, you can see that C# it's really high in the positions, whereas GDScript isn't there in the top positions, and it isn't really used by a lot of people. So let's say that I would like to work in a company. A company usually, if you want to work on a company, you usually have to know how to use Unity and C#. They will rarely tell you to use Godot and GDScript. As everything live, there are exemptions, but usually companies want you to make a game with either a Unity or Unreal. So if you are looking to be hired and get a job, maybe Godot is not a good option for you. And nowadays I am using Unity. I am not planning to switch to Unreal or other game engine or other programming languages. I'm really fine with Unity and C#. During the, I think, 8 months I've been using Unity, it didn't crash. Well, I've only made 2D project as well as Godot, but Godot sometimes crashed and closed, but Unity, no, it didn't crash. And also I have published a game on the Google Play Store called Swipe Never Stop. You can download it from the link on the description below using Unity, of course. And I am obviously working on other projects that you will later see on the channel. So in order to see those games I am preparing for you, you must be subscribed to the channel. Now let's go to the conclusion. I will recommend you to start with a basic program, with a basic programming language, I mean. For example, Python, because by using, for example, Python, you can learn the basic things of a programming language that are all the same in all programming languages: variables, functions, loops, and all things. Why to start with Python and not, for example, with C#? Because Python is really simple to use, and if you are a beginner, it will be easier to learn and understand. Whereas I think if you start with C#, I wouldn't say that it's impossible to start with C#, because there is a lot of people that have done it, but I wouldn't recommend you to do it, because if I had started using C#, it would be a complete mess. So start, I would say, with a basic programming language that, for example, Python or something basic, you know, some programming language that you can understand and start to use easily and quickly. And then you can choose either a game engine or other more advanced programming languages depending on your purposes. Of course, you are not going to choose a game engine if you want to make a website, of course, because you can't, or it's not the best option. So it will really depend on your purposes, but let's take the example that you want to be a game developer. You should start with a basic programming language, and then you have to choose a game engine. I have other previous videos about talking game engines, which is the best for you. I would really recommend you to watch these videos if you want to be a video game developer, and obviously, of course, subscribe to the channel. But I think the two main options to choose when you're starting are either Godot or Unity. Why? Because Godot is the most simple. It's one of the most simple game engines you can choose. It's bad. The bad points are that you don't have lots of tutorials. It's not really demanded by companies. You don't you can the program can crash and you can lose things from your project. Or you can choose Unity, much more difficult, demanded by companies, and you have a lot of information on the internet. It's up to you what to choose. Remember, there is no straight line if you want to learn programming. And also remember that programming languages are just tools that the programmer uses to make the projects. There isn't one best game engine, there isn't one best programming languages, but obviously there are programming languages that you should use to use video games, and there are programming languages you should use for other things. As I said before, you can't make a website in Unity, or it's impossible, I think, I don't know. So it's important to focus on your purposes. Once you know your purposes, you can start investigate how to learn the things you need in order to make the things you want. So remember to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment how did you start programming. This is all for today's video. I hope it was useful to you, and see you on the next one. Bye bye.